All right, if you go to September 8th, this is a different class period, but if you go to September 8th, it says click the link to access the guided notes on the Reformation. We will finish discussing the causes and Reformation and Martin Luther today. So you guys at home, make sure you watch this video and get your notes from this video here as we go through the PowerPoint. But if you click it, you'll get a document that looks like this, and you're just adding the words there. We're going to go pretty quick through these to get where we need to get to today. So let's get started. And as always, as we get started, we want to know why the Reformation or the Protestant Reformation took place. We probably don't know what Protestant means, and we barely know what Reformation means, but we know that something is going to happen or change. What do you think the word Protestant means? What's a guess? Protest. Yeah, basically. And there are people who were protesting for change. And what from? The Catholic Church. And so let's see why. Some of the causes, one of them being the 100 Years' War and Black Death. What does the 100 Years' War and the Black Death have in common? Do what? Say it again. Yeah, a lot of people. Like 40% of the world's population die because of these events. That's a big deal. And so that causes people to kind of doubt the Catholic Church. Catholic Church is saying that, it's all going to be okay and that everything's fine and, we're all going to go to heaven. Well, 100 Years' War, 40% of the population dies. You start to doubt the good things that God's promised. Secondly, the clergy was very uneducated. Now, what's the clergy? Anybody got a guess? The what? No, that's a good guess. The clergy is the church officials, like the priests, the monks, the friars. Now, the Pope probably was educated, and the Cardinals, not the baseball team and not the birds outside, the Cardinals were the people that worked with the Pope. They were probably educated. But the people underneath them, the monks, the priests, they were not educated. Some of them couldn't even read. Now imagine your teachers, like me, not being able to read but trying to teach you. Wouldn't make a lot of sense, would it? That's how it was back then. They couldn't read the Bible, but they were preaching it to them as if they knew what it said. And they were preaching things that they had been told. So that was an issue. Also, these people were busy with worldly affairs. They were busy with worldly affairs. Now remember, that comes from the Renaissance. Because the Renaissance had this idea that dealt with human potential and achievement. What was it called? Humanism. And so the priests of the world were practicing humanism. They were worried about secularism and worldly affairs. And, even the Pope, who had 5 children during this time, fathered 5 children. So they were kind of worried on those things instead of the spiritual work that they were doing. Some were gambling. Some were, like I said, practicing adultery. It just a lot of different things that were going on in the Catholic Church. Scientific advances were taking place. For instance, Nicholas Copernicus, he developed the heliocentric model of the universe, basically contradicting the idea that the earth was the center of the universe. He believed the sun was the center, which we all know today it is. But back then, the church had preached that the earth was at the center of the universe, and this directly contradicted it. So people started to say, if they were wrong about that, what else could they be wrong about? Just the same way that if I told you something and you looked it up and you said, oh, well, Coach Irby was wrong about that, then you might say, what else is he wrong about? You might start questioning me as well. And then lastly, the immediate cause was indulgences. The first 4 are long-term causes, long-term problems that have been taking place. The last one is something that had been taking place a long time, but it caused one monk to push for change. And indulgences are just paying money for a pardon of sins or reward for good behavior. And so these ideas are what caused the Reformation. Everybody good? So the church hierarchy, the Catholic Church is built up like this. You have the laity at the bottom. That's all of you. That's me. We are not church officials. We are not priests and monks and bishops or archdukes or cardinals or even the Pope. We're at the very bottom. We make up the majority of the list, but how far away from God are we? Furthest. God's at the top. We are not connected to God directly. We have a bunch of people in our way to talk to God. We have to talk to the priest, who talks to the bishops, who talks to the archbishops, all the way up to the Pope. The Pope is the only person that has direct relationship with God. And so remember that as we start talking about some of the changes. And we have the people have the largest portion of the pyramid, but they're the furthest away from God in terms of true connection with Him, based on the Catholic Church. Now, when we start talking about Martin Luther, he wasn't the first guy to try to reform the church. There were others that came before him, like John Wycliffe of England. He translated the Bible into English, which was, the Bible had always been preached in Latin and written in Latin, Greek, and things of that sort. Most people could not read it. Jan Hus of Bohemia, he's over here to the right. He preached in the vernacular. Does anybody remember what vernacular means? Petrarch wrote his love poems in the vernacular, and many people started to translate the Bible into the vernacular native languages. Native languages like Italian, German, French, English, they start to preach in those languages, and people start to really understand them. Both of these guys taught that the Bible had more authority than the church leaders. That's like saying my textbook, well, and it's a little different with the Bible, but my textbook has more authority than I do. But that's how the people saw it. That's how the church officials saw it. That they were interpreting the Bible for the people. Well, then these guys were saying that, well, the Bible's the final authority. It's the authority that people should actually listen to. Church officials didn't like that. And when the church officials didn't like it, you can probably guess, as what you're looking at, what happened to Jan Hus. What happened to him? Yeah, he died. They burned him at the stake. That's what's happening. They're building up the burn pile, and they're going to light him on fire. John Wycliffe was given a posthumous execution. Posthumous, by the prefix there, is post. So it means after something. He was already dead. They dug him up and then executed him. That's how mad these people were at contradicting the Catholic Church. That they took a dead body and they said, we executed that guy. No, he was dead. No, we executed him. That's a little too far, right? Like it's a little cray-cray. That's what we call Kennedy in this. It's a little Kennedy action right there. She would dig up a dead body. No, probably not. But that's what they did. What does that tell anybody that wants to change the Catholic Church in the future, that the Catholic Church is willing to do? To stop somebody from trying to change them. Anything. They're willing to do anything to stop these people from trying to change them. You know, if they're willing to dig up a dead body and re-execute them, they're willing to do anything. So we know why it came about and some early reformers, but what was it? Again, the Protestant church is someone that's protesting or that protested against the Catholic Church. And a Reformation is when people demand change. So that's where you get the name Protestant Reformation. They did not give themselves this name. We'll talk about it later, but the Protestant name was given to these people because they were protesting, and that's what the Catholic Church started calling them, the Protestant Reformation. They were protesting for change. Protesting for change. Is everybody good? So you always had Christianity. And for the longest, Christianity was Catholic. Is anybody Catholic? No, I got nothing against Catholics, so don't take it this way. So most people were Catholics, but we only have one Catholic in the room. Most people, after the Reformation, not most people, but most Christians would split after this point and become Protestants. So this is where, if you drive into Florence, you see a Lutheran church, a Baptist church, a Church of Christ, a Church of God, a Church of Nazarene. There's thousands, right? That's where this comes from. Because instead of us all being Catholic, now we split off. And there's still Catholics. There's still lots of Catholics. Catholic Church is still very big. But it split. And this is where that split begins. And we'll see it'll splinter even more than that. So we're going to look at some major reformers in this chapter, but we're really going to focus on Martin Luther. Martin Luther was a German monk, but he wasn't always a German monk. He was going to school to be a lawyer, and he gets caught in a thunderstorm, and he yells out, "Help me, St. Anne, I'll become a monk." You saw that probably in the video that we watched on Friday that you were supposed to watch. In that video, it talked about him yelling out, and he gets saved, he lives, and he becomes a monk. And so he becomes a monk, and he starts teaching and preaching and repenting, and he repents fervently all the time, so much so that they kind of get tired of it. And they send him on these diplomatic missions. But what he does is he just sees the corruption of the church everywhere he goes. So they finally send him to the church or the university in Wittenberg, or what we would say is Wittenberg, because we pronounce our W's a little different. And he starts to really figure out how he believed. And so he says that faith saves people, not good works. That you need to do good works, but your faith is what saves you. He believed in good works, just that your faith saved you. He believed that the ultimate authority for Christians is the Bible, that you believed in the Bible and you acted based off what the Bible said and not what the Pope said or what a church official said. And lastly, that no one is more important in God's eyes, that all humans are equal before God. Now remember that church hierarchy. Who was the most important person besides God in that church hierarchy? The Pope. Well, that contradicts it big time. This is saying that the Pope's here and I'm here. And then, of course, God's above that. So those are some big changes. The ultimate authority for Christians is the Bible. Well, again, that contradicts the Pope's power. And that faith saves people, not good works, meaning you don't have to do the good works to be saved. Is anybody still typing? Writing? You good? So some of his issues. So he has his beliefs, but here's some of his issues. First one is indulgences. While he's there in Wittenberg, he sees a friar, Johann Tetzel. And Tetzel was selling indulgences, and these are pardons for your sins. So people were paying money they could not afford, have their sins taken away. And that's not truly what the indulgences were supposed to be for, but they were using that to kind of raise taxes. And so that kind of bothered him. He looked at it as, you were supposed to be saved by faith alone, and then these indulgences were kind of getting in the way of that. You're having to pay for to get rid of your sins, and that's not how he felt. Secondly, he disagreed with the Catholic Church on the subject of usury, the lending of money and charging interest for it. He felt that that was something that the merchants could do. He disagreed with the absolute power and wealth of the church. He felt that the church should have spiritual power and less worldly power. And at this point in time in the world, the worldly power of the church was very, very significant. And so he disagreed with the idea of them having that much power. Also, the wealth of the church and how it was being used was something that he found corrupt. Remember, Michelangelo was summoned and commissioned by whom to paint the Sixtine Chapel? Pope. Pope was paying for works of art to be done at the Vatican. Other religious leaders were patrons of the arts. And so the wealth of the church was not only significant, but it was also being used incorrectly. And then lastly, the domination of the church by Italians. Most German priests and monks were secluded from the Vatican, and they felt like they should have a larger say in how the church was conducted. So those are the things he was upset with. Is everybody good? Yes. So what does he do? Now, in our day and age, what do we do about it? When we are upset, we have a protest, right? And we scream and yell, or probably like, I don't want to say your parents because they may not, but like a lot of people, they get on Facebook and they scream and yell on there. They get their digital muscles and they scream and yell on there. And if you're a little bit younger, then you get on Twitter and you do the same thing. Well, they didn't have Twitter and they didn't have Facebook, and he didn't go screaming and yelling. He wrote down 95 things that he disagreed with. Remember, you wrote down 3 things that you didn't like about the school or you wanted to change? He wrote down 95 of them. Here they are. Here's this gigantic list over to the right. Here's the gist of it. 95 complaints that he felt things were wrong with the Catholic Church. He criticized the Pope's power. He said the Pope had too much power. He said it in a lot more words than that, but that's basically what he said. He also talked about the church's extreme wealth and how it was being used. And then he talked about indulgences and their corrupt practice of using indulgences. So those are the 3 things that, 3 main ideas. And each of them kind of go with the points that he was talking about in his beliefs. Faith alone, taking away indulgences for that, equality in relationship with God, and then just the overall use of money by the church. So he's got this big list. What does he do with it? If you wanted change to happen in the school, could Kennedy make things happen by herself? No, what does she need? You need what? People, right? She need a lot of people to agree with her and to back her up. Well, so did Luther. He posted the list of the 95 Theses on the church doors at Wittenberg. There is where all the news actually was posted. So if you wanted somebody to see something, you posted on the church doors. You can see on the church doors here in this picture that other things were posted on there. So if you wanted somebody to see it, you posted on the church doors. It was kind of like the news gathering place of these towns. So somebody does. And luckily for Luther, unlike many other reformers before him, there was this new invention. And it had the ability to spread information around really quickly. What was it? Printing press. And so the printing press helped spread this idea really quickly. Somebody copied his work down, sent it to the printing press, and they started printing them. A book could be made in 5 months with a single writer. 1 book over 5 months. With a printing press, a printing press could create 500 books in 5 months. So a lot more production. So something like this, they could print out thousands of copies very quickly. What did it do? Well, the people supported him because he was talking about giving the people more power. Who criticized him? Who criticized him? The church. So the church criticized him, but he gained support from the people because a lot of the things he was talking about were like, hey, we're equal with God. I like that. Hey, I don't have to buy indulgences anymore. I like that. Oh, the church should use some of their money to help me out. I like that too. They kind of got on board with it. But the church is like, whoa, you going to talk bad about the Pope? Oh, you're going to talk bad about how our money's spent? Oh, we can't raise any taxes anymore? We can't get indulgences? What are we going to do? So a lot of backlash. And so the issues that came about from the 95 Theses are going to be what we talk about when we discuss this next time. Before we move on, I just want to talk about kind of his main points again to make sure we understand what we're saying. Luther's main teachings were salvation by faith alone, teaching based on the Bible, and all people are equal before God. Now, he didn't say all people are equal because guess what? We're going to still get into next chapter is about slavery. So all people are equal before God. It's all about salvation. His changes are talking about changes to the church. But those are his teachings, and those teachings are going to cause some problems that we'll see have to be handled by the Pope and by the other worldly governments that are in place in Europe. But we're going to dive a little bit deeper into his 95 Theses today with your assignment. So if you go back to Schoology in the folder that you were working on earlier, in September 8th, and you use the second link, You'll click there and use the second link to access the Martin Luther tweet assignment. Today we learned a lot about Martin Luther and his protests against the Catholic Church. We're going to dive a bit deeper into his 95 Theses today. You will be reading 6 of his theses and rewriting them in your own words. We do this because it'll help you make better sense of them. We don't read like Martin Luther anymore, so we want to write them in our own words today. After this, you'll be creating tweets as if you were Martin Luther living today. Remember, when tweeting, to use hashtags and at people that information would matter to. So if you click this link here, you'll get this document here, and let me zoom out so you can see the whole thing. So you get this document here, and there are 6 things to read and to rewrite and then to tweet about. So we'll do this one together. It says that Christians are to be taught that he who gives to the poor or lends to the needy does a better deed than he who buys indulgences. Well, we know that indulgences are about buying forgiveness. So I've just replaced indulgences and buying for paying for forgiveness. And so Christians are to be taught that who gives to the poor or lends to the needy does better. I said good works and charity. That's to me what doing that right there is, giving to the poor or lends to the needy, are better than paying for forgiveness. So that's me rewriting that information in my own words. To tweet about it, I use some lingo or some styles that you would see on Twitter today. You see a lot of greater thans. This is greater than that. So I put charity greater than indulgences. And then I put hashtag blessed because, why not? And then because it's doing religious stuff, dealing with religious stuff. And then I put at Tetzel because I want him to see this. Johann Tetzel was the guy selling indulgences that pushed Martin Luther over the top. So I want him to see it because I'm going to add him. And that's what you do for each of these. You just read it, reorganize it in your own words here, and then be creative and make a tweet about it. It could be something equals something. It can be a lot of different things. But the reason we're writing in your own words is because we're going to get to the point where we can write papers, and paraphrasing and writing things in your own words is important for that purpose. So make sure you do your assignment today. When you finish, you'll click File, Download, and download as a PDF, and then submit onto Schoology. If you have any questions, send me an email, and make sure that you get this done by Sunday before midnight. All right. If there's nothing else, have a great day.